Hey, we're here with Dave, who is the founder, the CEO, and the chief executive athlete of Ion Network, thought leader of thought leaders, and he's also in two different books. One is called Peak Performance Mindset Tools for Leaders. The other one is called Peak Performance Mindset Tools for Entrepreneurs. And so Mr. Dave here is going to be telling us about just what he's figured out as far as achieving our full potential, building and exiting multiple successful companies, strategic investment, so much more. So, Mr. Dave,
Oh
glad to
boy.
be speaking with you.
It-
Dave Behar currently has you super excited. What's your focus and passion?
well, scale. I've always built businesses around scale, but with, of course, purpose and good branding and stuff. But yeah, right now it's all about scaling up our Ion network, which is the network of champions.
And what's that all about?
Yeah,
Scaling a
it's
network of
thousands of
champions.
local
Who's tuning
channels.
in?
Yeah, it's thousands of local channels, multi-platform, and quite frankly, delivering what is in studio, our in studio operations, as well as our a great number of leagues and events that we do, primarily in sports and definitely with a great focus on health and nutrition. All built around great, wholesome family, kids type stuff, but definitely at the professional and collegiate level as well.
Well, very cool. And to give us
Yeah.
an idea, like, is there a particular sport or league or program that you feel is a good example of the excellence that you have?
Well, it's interesting you ask because we're having some fun. So our company DNA, again, we do what is the stick and ball sports, those sports that people know and love and are at the highest of major sports levels. But we're having some fun right now of all things pig racing.
Really?
Your reaction? Pig racing, and believe it or not, we're also getting our heads around turtle racing, and
Ooh.
we're slowing it down a little bit. But I say that because we do a lot in food and beverage, and why I bring up those two sports, they happen to involve animals and have been tried and true for years and years. But we layering in our league DNA, and so that is not just for those operators that are looking for additional revenue streams, but the viewership alone in those two sports, and we have a couple more up our sleeve. It just adds to what we do in sports like even beach volleyball, pro beach volleyball, and of course in major sports as we know it, both as media credentialed as well as doing our production and distribution across local channels. So yeah, lots of fun, and if it's not fun, it's not business if it's not fun. So
Right. How else will
yeah,
you sustain yourself? And you mentioned viewership, and so what that makes me ask
yeah,
is like, what's the popularity of this? Like you say, pig racing and turtle racing. Is this
yeah,
thousands? Is this millions? And more
yeah,
importantly, like, how do people tune in? Is it like a Roku? Is it a browser based?
yeah.
How do we find it? And
Right,
how many people?
right. So again, I know it's off the wall for one second. What the heck is pig racing, turtle racing, and believe it or not, we're also doing fish racing. But more a lot of this is based around people's affinities. Like, for example, the pig racing, it's in five. It's in more states, but we currently are supporting it in 5 states, 30 different events. These are primarily at state and county fairs. Between the audience on location being just packed, we're talking about in the millions of people that are actually watching on location and then plugging in um, on screen. So we do deep dives in terms of database marketing and certainly enlightening the crowds. We are working in concert with the operators that bring it, which is the All Alaskan Racing Pigs. And in this case, it's exciting because a family will go to spectate in an arena on the most part. and it's really engaging. And we look at it as community based, even though it's got quite a footprint. Pardon the pun, because these are pretty amazing athletes, and all the athletes now, they are representing teams in towns and such. So it is a really interesting marketing platform, but it's just an example of what we do in transforming, pre-existing sports and competitions into a league style format, because it's a format that done most of my career, and then our team is really just well suited between producing and distributing the content and the merchandising and such. So it's super cool and it's fun. So yeah.
It sounds super cool and fun, and I can only imagine many of the challenges, right? Because it sounds like
Yeah.
it requires a lot of people, a lot of momentum, a lot of attention. And like, has it always been easy, or like, where have you struggled in growing this amazing Ion network?
Yeah. Well, listen, first of all is the sheer scale of it. Whenever you're trying to deal with what is a growing organization that requires expertise in new media. And Robert, it's changes daily, especially in the social side of things. So the struggles are a little bit more based on ambition always meeting reality versus struggling as in we're failing, because we try to set things up where we're not really ever failing. And although we learn from the failures, if you will, but we don't call them failures. They're just, we're always just working to be the best. What else is there? So um, we're always met with what is, again, trying to outdo ourselves. And then indeed the distribution of the shows, which, by the way, it does include the upload process of others and other content creators uploading into our network. So it's not just us on the production side, but at the same time, you're talking about distribution across thousands of local markets. And so, if you want to call it the struggle, is just to keep continuously improving that process, as well as have there be the articulation of those that want to do basically the same to their content. Because as you know, everyone's a network these days,
Yeah.
whether professionally or with their iPhone. So we're here to support that, so they can distribute in one or 25,000 towns in North America. So
And what about the surprises? Because I imagine that with all of these, I mean, crazy in a good way, right? Sports and leagues and events and food and beverage. Like, sometimes you think something will be a huge hit and then it just completely bombs, or you're not sure
yeah.
something will work and then unexpectedly blows up. So in all these adventures that you've had, have there been any surprises like that, either one extreme or the other?
Yeah, I'd have to think about that a little bit, because we go into things again with not over investing and over promising or any of that, to where expectation often leads to disappointment. So we don't set up high expectation both within and whoever we're doing business with. I think I I know what, like, in a way, your question, you're looking for what is those challenges, what is maybe the struggle, but the reality is that we are very eager to keep improving, and so we start a little smaller and slower with a little bit more of a phase of planning, and we plan the work and work the plan. So we essentially, we walk before we run. It's interesting, the analogies, but it's true. And if you're trying to avoid too much struggle, like, we keep the stress level low. By thinking about keeping the stress level low, we are able to deliver and breathe easier and have a far better outcome versus, again, over promising something even to ourselves. So it's just one of those things. And I think that each situation is different. I mean, we look at every thing we do is like a client execution, even though in our case, we're in many ways the client. So we're just, again, trying to make sure that we are fulfilling our goals and setting the right pace.
Well, what are you working on now? What's got you excited about the future as far as projects and possibilities?
Yeah, so as far as what we're working on now is we're enhancing our technology infrastructure so it's far easier to distribute shows and video across our digital network. And then the OTT platform is scaling up. And what we're real excited about there is, besides our own original program, which, you know, some of it is, of course, sports and Ion comedy. Ion Kids is one of the newer parts of the business, even though we've been in the kids business for some time. But Ion Kids, the animation, the cartoons and so forth, that's going on, particularly over OTT, which includes Apple and Android and Roku. Um, and we're going to be bringing back some, let's call it, some traditional values that marketers and certainly community members, when I say community, I mean local markets, so people can actually associate really well with who we are because of what we do inside the communities. Um, but it's to, again, support to where we're really promoting activation, not just keep watching a screen. And that's what you should do all day, but to motivate folks to be out and be active and healthy. So all of that relates to healthy then content and undertones and the brand partners to support that. So on the flip side, so that's sort of the OTT, part of it. Even Ion Comedy, which we've been doing a significant amount of work in like pop-up comedy, and there is pretty amazing comedians out there, and they're not necessarily all on the biggest of stages, and so our platform with Ion Comedy, we are showcasing it through our OTT platform as well as the rest of our digital channels, and that's really exciting, really fun. Um, and likewise, and not necessarily in tandem, going back to the league things that we're doing, is the National Bartender League. And those are some, superstars that have great stories and entertain people when they're out for an evening. And it's one of the things that we're doing that is exciting. We're able to, have our brand partners play a role in that, so they can better reach the adult market, if you will, meaning the consuming public over 21, and then the National Pizza League, which it's pizzerias around the country. Every town has a pizzeria or a restaurant that serves pizza, and so our format and methodologies there are pretty exciting. So, um,
And so to help me
then,
kind of follow along with like these leagues, like when you say the pizza league, is it like a cooking competition? Like what's the entertainment there?
yeah, I'll tell you, Robert. How do I say this? Every family in the business feels that they have the best recipe, the best sauce, the best cheese crust, etc. And in many ways they do. It's just that there's a lot of them. So there is a competitive aspect, and part of that competition relates to where you buying your pie from. And you could say that could include frozen as well. But so you have your favorite pie, and people will be speaking through the sale of the product to fundraising of the product, and likewise through the storytelling. So there's no question there's on location activity, meaning events, as well as the National Pizza League showing up at a couple of sports competitions as well. But it is a sport. They are competing, and there is actually a number of things that pizzerias do when they're also entertaining the customers besides just putting out a great product, whether it be New York, Chicago, so on and so forth. So it's fun stuff, and it's also glue. It's of communities, how they operate, and those leaders in the community, and in each community, not just larger towns type of thing. So competitive wise, we'll just continue to build that platform. In the meantime, the storytelling's going on, and it's just great stuff. There's some great all stars, and there's a lot of proudness, of course, in the space.
Yeah,
And
and,
who
and I can
doesn't
tell
like
you.
a good piece of
Yeah,
action? So
right, good piece of action, good piece of pie, and I can definitely tell that you enjoy what you do and that you're a people person. And I want to circle back
yeah,
at the end and talk about Ion Network, but real quick, I want to just fit in a little bit about these two books that you're in, because sometimes we say, man, this guy Dave, I like what he has to say, I like what he has going on, I want to find out more about him. So
yeah.
these chapters that you have in these books, like, is there one that you think out of these two that is like really worth talking about? Like, what did you write about that should get us really attentive and excited?
Well, it's kind of simple in a way because my methodology, Robert, is utilizing the ion words, and there is definitely some favorites, and that's depicted in each of the chapters, like even collaboration and defining at least our version and my version of collaboration and ambition and recognition and those type of things for there to be business succession. So it's the style by the nature of our brand DNA that has purpose all over, because we practice that stuff internally, or I internally as a company, as well as individually. So it's our sense of organization. And I think anybody who reads those chapters, I think will not just get what I'm talking about, but also there's definitely an expansion going on with our ion-infused words. Um, it wasn't all that long ago that we had hosted at San Diego State an AI conference, primarily in line with what is the Journalism and Media Studies program, as the university which I'm on the board of, and so Ion Intelligence was born, and there is that question, and then I can relate it back to even the literary stuff, the books and stuff. But here's now all the buzz about AI and artificial intelligence. It's been around for several decades, and it's now obviously surfaced and becoming a lot more, for sure, consumer accessible, because it's always existed in our digital environments and such, and some of our daily lives. But now it's the conversation about utilizing your human intelligence, besides relying upon artificial intelligence. And then what is it? So rather than being in the middle of the conversation and actually considering ourselves what would be the experts, it's more about utilizing your human intelligence to not to forget about everything is human driven on the most part. So for positive outcomes, you still need the human involved and deciding how you may be using another form of intelligence. So that's what Ion Intelligence is about. Besides us being able to, really be able to present our ion integrity behind all that. So, I
Well,
mean, there you have
I love the
it.
plays
So,
on words, ion integrity, the ion intelligence, and am I
yeah.
understanding it right? Like there's like you have like a ion, like it attracts the other molecules. Like, what's the meaning behind that?
It's what do you have your eye on?
Ooh, even better.
Yeah. Well, something, again, it goes back to having fun, Robert, because, um, yeah, there's a story with how the three-letter word, created it, in the original of it. been off. There's imitations of it, and or folks that have kind of ripped off our intellectual property or attempted to. Um, but it's just us, and it's rely on Ion, and I get a kick out of being able to do that with the brand that we created, and it's really just part of us in our everyday and DNA versus kind of a corporate approach that is, while we have the corporate principles, at the same time it's about having fun and running a great business that can just again help others succeed. And we call that enablation, by the way.
Of
So,
course. Well, very nice. And so you have a great message because, we want to enrich other people's lives and make money and help people and grow things and scale and
yeah.
everything that goes along with that. And so if someone was impressed, blown away by your message, what are some next steps here? How do they find out about that? Ion Network, you mentioned OTT. How does someone find out more about you?
Yeah, I mean, I will send them over to ions.com. And that's just a growing environment. It's continuing to evolve. I'll go back to the ambition meeting reality of connecting all the dots of not just our world, but also others' world in terms of content creation. Because then you could find out more about us there. I mean, you can also kind of check me out on LinkedIn, and just type it in and go. So, yeah,
Type in and go, see
and
what there is, see what excites you.
yeah, exactly.
Well, very cool. So that is everything there, right? Like you weren't kidding. There's pets, music, kids, government, fitness, games, comedy, sports, all that sort
Yeah,
of stuff. And so it's an
yeah,
amazing platform and operation that you built here, Mr. Dave. So that's
yeah,
ions.com. And then to find you
yeah.
on LinkedIn, that's Dave Behar, Behar. And
Correct.
there's a
Yeah,
few there's a few Dave and Davids. Is there an easy way to separate you from the pack?
yeah. I mean, I would be the original one there. I think just Dave Behar.
Okay,
Um,
so yeah, looks
you
like
just
linkedin.com/in/Dave Behar. So there's a
correct.
David and a Dave, but those are just some of those
Yeah, I'm sure they're all good guys.
who's a chief executive athlete. I'm
Yeah,
sure they are. Nothing against them, but hey, there's only one of you. And then that website we say is ions.com,
yeah,
ions.com. Just scroll through
right.
and check out. I mean, there's even a Ion Law Network, Ion Crime Network, all over the place. And
Yeah, I
then
mean, listen.
before I, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
this is just about people's lives, and I mean, and categorically those they exist. So what you're actually seeing is you're seeing where you, as a content creator, as a influencer, in our case it's an influencer, where you'll be able to upload into that network from a category standpoint, but also market yourself across um, local channels, 25,000 plus in North America alone. So it's the ion and in the infrastructure that's what you're seeing, and we developed some original programming in those areas, absolutely, but we're really here to again enable others to succeed and be again a next generation to even find great shows, great content, and for that matter, great e-commerce experiences, and we just go from there. Yeah.
very nice. What a time to be alive, right? And it's always easy to
That's right.
complain about like sometimes the network TV, it's like lazy, or the big budget movies are formulaic. Well, hey, this is real people, real business owners, real people doing the entertaining and the cooking and the beverage and the pets and the kids
Yeah.
and the shows. And so people can participate in this amazing network that you've created. And the website is ions.com. But before I let you go, Dave, it's time for the
Yep.
scary part of the show where I try to put you on the spot and I ask for a quote or lesson that has served you that you can pass on to us. So, what comes to mind for a quote or lesson?
A quote or a confession?
Uh oh, that can be dangerous.
I there's a lot of quotes. and I'm going to be stumped on this one, I think. I'd almost want to suggest I circle back with you on the quotes that I've done that I've created, but I actually don't have a favorite quote, and that would be one of my confessions. Even though there's some amazing quotes, thousands of them, of course. So.
Okay, so that's the first so far here. So you say just nothing. You're saying blank slate, and you live life the way that makes sense to you, and that's ions.com, Mr.
You
Dave
said
Behar.
it.
Yeah, I said it. That's my interpretation of you, and I love what you created. Love what we have going on, and thank you very much, Mr. Dave, for showing up, stopping by, giving us some wonderful life and business advice. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, Robert. It's been fun.